Hey, thank thank you very much, Volkan. It's great to thank you for having me. And it's yeah, same here, really. Thank you. Yeah, hopefully. Thank you very much. Yes, yes, sure, sure. Whenever you're ready, I'm ready. Okay, okay. So let me begin with, of course, my name is Adam. That's obvious. Uh, I'm originally Eritrean, but like I lived almost all my life in Saudi Arabia, and then we studied in Cyprus, and I was supposed to be an electronics engineer. That's what I graduated for. Yeah, but like during my career as working as an electronics engineer, I like one day it happened that I started teaching English as a part-time. Okay, and that's when everything started to shift in my career, right? Because teaching English had really opened many doors for me. Like, I mean, I don't mean doors as opportunities, doors as thinking. It opened my thinking. Okay, so currently I'm based in Dubai. I have been in Dubai for about a year and a half now, exactly as a year and a half, and I'm a professional development coach, specialized in. I was gonna fall with you. Yeah, it's okay, no problem. So yeah, I'm a professional development trainer, coach, and speaker, specialized in leadership and communications. I'm also a public speaker. I gave two TED Talks before, and hopefully I'm going to be giving one this coming year, hopefully. So yeah, that's in a that's about me. That's what I'm doing right now. Yeah, true. Okay. Uh, I started teaching English exactly 11 years ago, and it has always been like I started it as a part time, and it's but with time, just like I told you earlier, started opening a lot of doors for me. So going back to 2009, that was when I started. Uh, when I started teaching English, I started uh, focusing more on how students perceive the language, because English, because in traditional teaching, what usually teachers do is that they just throw in information to the students, and then they come at the end of the term or at the end of the course, and then they test them for what the information that they gave them, right? So I was not teaching kids, I was teaching adults, and I've always taught adults. So I started asking myself questions, like trying to find different ways on how to develop these students. Okay, so I worked like in a language center, in the same language center. I worked for about 8 or 9 years, something like that. And of course, I was going in and out. I was going in and out because it was a part-time job. But at the same time, I also gave English language programs to companies, ministries in Saudi Arabia. And yeah, so I've been doing that in and out with the English language. But then with time, I started focusing, and this is what brought me into the professional development, being a coach and leadership and so on. I started focusing more on the student's mind, not the subject, English itself. Because in my classes, I always used to do a lot of activities. I always say if students are not having fun, they're not learning. But then at the same time, I can have a group of students that I teach them exactly the same way. Some of them succeed, they become very good, and some of them, they don't change. Like even if I stay for 6 months, 8 months, or 1 year with them, right? So that made me start looking into human psychology, how the mind works, neuroplasticity, and I began researching. I also went to neuro-linguistic programming courses. I'm a master NLP practitioner now. And that was all just to solve this problem. You know, why are some students gaining it and some students are not gaining it, right? So, yeah. So with time, I started realizing that, you know what, I should start working less with the English language and more with the minds of the students. Because if the mind of the student is not ready to learn, to accept the language, then whatever I feed him, whatever information I feed him, is not gonna work with him or with her, right? So with time, as I was doing that, so I used to go do researches, go do courses, and then experiment on my students, and it was really wonderful. Now, as a teacher, like the best feeling any teacher can have, and I'm sure you would agree with me, and any teacher who's watching right now would agree with me, is that like when you teach someone and you see that someone really developing, that you're seeing results in that person, it's a priceless feeling. Like it's an amazing feeling, right? And that feeling become really, really addictive. Okay, yeah. So doing that, I started. After that, I started doing other programs because now teaching English is about developing your skills. And then I started asking myself, well, Adam, okay, how are you developing your skills? Right? And then a funny thing is that every skill has the same learning pattern, whether it's English language skills, whether it's leadership skills, whether it's business skills, they all have the same pattern, you know? So that's when I started my track as a leadership trainer, and I started my public speaking journey. And so yeah, that's how English opened too many doors for me, and until it got to a point where today I am conducting coaching programs for English learners. Yeah, yeah. So that's what the journey have. That's where the journey has made me land. You know, because again, it's the mind, working with the mind more than working with the material. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, I have done too many things. Yeah. Uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. Yeah. Okay. It was on 3 stages. Of course, when I started teaching English, I was not certified. I just happened to find myself in a class, right? And I remember the first day I went in the class, when the academic director was observing my teaching. I was doing great with the students as building relationships, but I didn't know the material, honestly. I didn't know what grammar I'm teaching, and I was lost. So he told me something very, very important. After we finished, he told me, Adam, like, I love the way you built relationship with the students. He's like, but you need to work on your content, on your grammar, right? And then he told me something else. He's like, I'm going to hire you because building relationships is a lot harder skill than just learning the content or learning the grammar. So you got that. That's why you're getting hired. So that was really amazing. Yeah, and that gave me a lot of insights on how relationships or rapport with students really help their learning with the teacher, right? And after that, I went and did the CELTA certification. Yeah, and that also, in the CELTA certification, of course, I learned a lot of things, but one of the most important thing that I learned, which was like we had an assignment once where they told us, research your students. Like really study your students, find a common problem, and write an article about the solution that you want to provide. So we spent a week sitting down with the students, talking to them, asking them what are your problems, trying to observe them when they're getting taught. So that really changed the perspective for me, because after we did that assignment, now the way I'm seeing the students is completely different. Now I understand them a lot more. And on the other side, for the students, now they began to trust me more or trust the teachers more, because now we're asking them questions, how can we help you? Right? Yeah. So that was the turning point for me in that specific subject. But then the more I got interested in the human psychology, how the mind works, I went in and I did the neuro-linguistic programming NLP course, the basic course, and the master practitioner course. And again, now when you do NLP, like you can do therapies for example, chronic pain, for character change. There are a lot of therapies that you do, but I didn't study the NLP for the therapies because I've never done any therapy after that. The reason I did the NLP was to go back to my students and understand how they're thinking even more. Yeah. So that's NLP, and then at the later on, and that's this certification that I work with right now. I have become a certified coach, trainer, and speaker by John Maxwell. Yeah. So these are the major parts for me. Other. Mhm. Yes, the John Maxwell team is a very popular company, and John Maxwell himself has been rated as the #1 leadership guru in the world in 2014, 15, and 16, I guess. He wrote more than 70 books on leadership. Yeah, yeah. So from there, I started now, because sometimes, we gather knowledge and we fall into that same mistake we sometimes do with the students, is that we collect too much information, but we just like collecting information and not doing anything with it doesn't do anything for you, right? So I started creating action plans for books that I read, for programs that I go to, even for example, the coaching program for English language learners. It has to have an action plan. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And in 2016, I was involved in a startup with a British company called H2 Advisory. And it was basically on developing education. So we focused a lot on developing education and, again, creating competency-based programs for teachers in schools. But I didn't last long in that place because I also had a lot of other things going on. Yeah. So those are that's the sum of the professional development I've done, and there are a lot of more. Yeah. That's yeah. These are at the core. These are the core. Yeah. Yeah. True. Actually, all my programs are online. You know. Now, well, I don't call myself experienced. I'm still a learner, right? But see, I am not like I haven't been in Dubai for a very long time. It's just been a year, you know. So, and when I came here, I didn't come here because I was offered a job or there was something clear for me. I just came here for a new challenge, you know. And yeah, and I went in. It took me some time to explore the market here in Dubai. Like I was focusing on the professional development, leadership trainings, and so on. And I landed very good clients, but then this Corona thing happened. You know, it just got in between. But I was like I was always prepared for the online. What do you call it? Yeah, the online. Yeah, distant learning. Yeah, that's right. True. Volkan, right now we are at a time, we are in an era where almost every person you know or I know would hold their mobile at least 2 to 3 times in an hour, you know? And exactly. Now, uh, uh, when we talk about reaching the students, yes, it's possible to reach students. Like it's possible to reach a lot more students online than offline. You know, like, yeah, you know. So how do I reach my students when it comes to the English industry or the English market? Is that see, I create a platform, right? No, I have Ido's Academy Instagram page, okay, and what I do in the Ido's Academy Instagram page is just I provide value to whoever comes across it, you know. So my goal is to have almost each of my followers just look at some value from Ido's Academy every day, right? Now, of course, as a teacher, you also have like so sometimes we get really carried away by the business part of it. We want to now sell our courses to the students now, and we get in a hurry. Okay, you know what? Let me just put in one brochure, put in one flyer, talk about this course that I'm giving, and so on. Uh, for me, like probably right now I have almost 400 posts in my Edo's Academy page. Probably out of the 400 posts, there are only 2 posts that say "come by for me." You know, and the reason I do that is, uh, if like I want to be deserving of the student's time, attention, and the money that he's paying, right? And if I don't provide value to that student and then I'm asking him, I'm just being a salesperson, not a teacher or not an influencer. You know, so most of my of the people that I'm coaching right now in the English language are not people that came from what do you call it, from marketing or online reaching, but they're people that saw value on my content, and then they went into my DM, and then they told me, listen, I need this. What can you do for me? Right? So that's how I acquire most of my students. But I just, like, my ultimate goal is to keep having a platform that continuously feeds the students stuff that they would really benefit. Now, I also started a show on YouTube. I started 2 shows on YouTube recently because I also like, now, one thing I always make sure to do is that I want to be available for every student all the time. So if a student comes to my Instagram page and he posts a question, I do my best to answer each and every question that comes to me, so I benefit the student right away. So from that idea, because I get too many questions and I spend a lot of time in that in answering the questions, I was like, you know what? Since I'm in the business of sharing value with people, let me get these questions from people and record them in a show and put it as a show on YouTube, so everyone can benefit from the answer. Because if you ask me a question, Volkan, and I answer you, I'm adding value to you. But if you ask me a question and I record a video for the answer and I share it online, now I'm reaching more people with the answer. You know? And sometimes students have questions in their mind, but they're not trained to ask the question. They don't know what to ask. You know? So when they get there and then they see these questions and answers, they benefit from that. So basically, there is no strategy that I use of reaching the people online, but I want to have a home. I want to create a home for people where they can find every resource they need for the English language. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah. And for every now and then, sorry to interrupt you. Every now and then, I also announce webinars, online webinars, where like last webinar I announced, I've had like 300 people joining that webinar, which was way beyond my expectation, and that tells me that there are still a lot of people who are hungry for value in the English language. Yeah, very, very true, very true. Yeah, and just to add also another point, you know, as a teacher, the biggest problem that I face is all the marketing messages other commercialized institutes that throw out on the social media or in any advertising medium. When they say, come learn English in 1 month, become fluent in English in 2 months, you know? So like a student goes in and sees all these advertisements and like day after day, week after week, when he's seeing a lot of these advertisements, a lot of students come in thinking, they have a subconscious thought that somewhere, somehow, there is a way that they can learn English very fast. And that's the first thing I tell any person who's joining my program. Listen, there's no easy way. Like, learning English requires hard work, it requires consistency, and it requires desire. If you have that strong desire, if you're willing to be consistent, or at least you try to develop yourself in consistency, then I'm willing to take you as my student. Yeah? So that's another problem we face as teachers as well. Yeah. Uh, Okay. Now I always now just imagine if a student comes in like because if I'm coaching someone in English, I would be speaking with them once every week, right? So when I start speaking with the student, sometimes I use warm-up activities because if you're speaking in one language, even for us fluent people, if you're speaking in one language for a long time, for a day or two, you haven't used the other language, when you come switch, your mind needs a little time to calibrate and start using that language, right? So I use a warm-up activity and I tell them, especially with the beginner levels, which is I tell them, listen, let's have this for 15 minutes. I'll say a word. For example, if I say beautiful, you see the last letter of the word, and then you tell me another word that starts with that letter. So I say beautiful. She will say long. I was like, okay, good. So G, a grape. So we go on that. Now, what I'm doing with her actually, I'm warming her up and I'm training her mind to think faster. Yeah. Yeah. That's right, yeah. And then I would go to making stories. Like for example, I would set up a scenario, I'd set up a scene, or I'll start a story, not a story that I've written. It's just a random story, and then I would stop at a place and then ask my student to just tell me one sentence, just complete one sentence, give me one extra information, and then she will give me one extra information, and then I will give her one extra information, and I see how long, how much stamina he or she would have in doing this exercise. And of course, the more I do it with students, the more they have more stamina in speaking English, and they have they generate a deeper memory of remembering what to say, what sentences to say, and so on. Yeah. Th- that's very true. That's very true. You know, because my main aim when I teach a student is the mind. If I can help the student really reorganize his thinking, reorganize the connection between his memory and his tongue, and in speed, then I'm succeeding in teaching the person. Yeah. I can think about many. I can think about I because I always try to be as creative as I can. Sometimes I get a picture. Sometimes I get a picture, and we start describing the picture. You know, and like for example, just a normal picture of let's say of a green land where there are trees and so on. So we would start explaining what's in the picture. There are like 10 trees. They're green. One of them is an apple tree. There is a man standing between two trees, and so on. And then later on, we would maybe talk about the person who was taking the picture. Well,